The desert air choked with dust as Rex's hind legs buckled under the python's crushing weight. The German Shepherd, all 85 pounds of muscle and border patrol training, thrashed violently, his claws raking bloody furrows in the sand. But the 14-foot monster only tightened its coils, each squeeze forcing air from Rex's lungs with a pained whimper. This wasn't hunting. This was execution. Somewhere beyond the ringing in his ears, Rex heard the distant shouts of his handlers, their voices swallowed by the vast Arizona wasteland. The python's cold eyes watched without blinking as Rex's vision darkened. It had done this before, many times. The bones scattered around them told that story, and now Rex was just another chapter. Every scale on the invasive predator's body seemed to pulse with deadly knowledge. This wasn't its first strangulation. The python had perfected its technique on coyotes, javelinas, even a black bear cub last winter. Rex's teeth snapped uselessly against diamond-patterned hide as the serpent methodically repositioned, cutting off blood flow to the dog's brain. The desert watched in silent complicity. No bird sang, no lizard scurried. Even the wind held its breath as nature's perfect killing machine did what evolution designed it to do. Somewhere in Rex's fading consciousness, a memory surfaced. His handler's voice. "They don't fight fair, boy." The python's head swayed inches from Rex's face, forked tongue tasting his dying breaths. It knew. They always stopped fighting right about now.
It wasn't the sound of pain, not exactly. Any desert creature could recognize that wet, shuddering gasp, the sound of a good animal giving up. Rex's tail, usually a proud flag of his German lineage, lay limp in the dirt. His once keen amber eyes clouded over as oxygen deprivation set in. The python sensed victory, its coils shifting for the final, rib-snapping squeeze. Then, a miracle. Rex's nostrils flared at a new scent, cutting through the metallic tang of his own blood. Mountain lion. Close. The python stiffened, its head jerking up as a guttural scream shattered the afternoon calm. Some primal part of Rex's brain rejoiced, even as the rest prepared for death. Predators didn't help other predators. Not here, not ever. But what came crashing through the brittle bush wasn't just any predator. It was vengeance on four paws. The cougar's roar wasn't mere noise. It was the desert itself screaming. The lioness exploded from the rocks in a golden blur, her 120-pound frame slamming into the python with the force of a freight train. Rex's world spun as the coils loosened just enough for one desperate gasp of air. Through swimming vision, he saw them. The lioness's back claws raking bright red trenches down the python's length, while her jaws sought the killing bite behind its skull. This was no random attack. Every move screamed purpose. Recognition flashed in the snake's eyes as it writhed. It knew this lioness, and she knew it. The python released Rex entirely now, turning its full fury on this greater threat. Rex collapsed sideways, his body screaming in protest as he watched nature's grudge match unfold. The lioness's lips pulled back in a snarl that showed every one of her 2-inch canines. This wasn't territory. This was personal.
The lioness fought with the single-minded fury only a mother could muster. This was the beast that had taken her cub last monsoon season. She remembered the pattern of its scales, the way it constricted just a little too slowly to make death quick. Now she paid it back in kind. Her claws found the python's old scar tissue and tore, peeling back sections of scale like opening a gruesome present. The desert air filled with the coppery stench of reptile blood. Rex, forgotten by both combatants, dragged himself backward with his front paws, his hind legs leaving limp trails in the sand. He'd seen animals fight before, but this was murder in the first degree. The python struck wildly, fangs glistening, but the lioness danced aside with unnatural grace. She wasn't just fighting to kill, she was fighting to make it hurt. For one split second, mid-attack, the lioness saw again, her spotted cub's face contorted in the same terrified expression as the python took its last breath months ago. The memory fueled her like nothing else could. She clamped her jaws around the snake's midsection and shook with enough force to dislocate a steer's neck. Bones cracked, whether the python's or her own, she didn't care. Somewhere beyond the red haze of vengeance, she registered the German shepherd crawling away. Normally, she'd finish him too. The desert didn't tolerate weakness. But today she'd let the two-legs creature live. Let it carry the story back to its hairless masters. The python thrashed in her grip, its tail whipping up a dust storm as it tried to coil around her foreleg. Big mistake. With a roar that shook cacti needles loose, she bit down until her teeth met through scale, flesh, and something that might have been its spine.
The battle turned into something from a nightmare. The python's constricting loops found purchase around the lioness's ribcage, squeezing with enough force to collapse a steel drum. She responded by sinking her claws deep into its eyes. Nature's version of a bar fight gone wrong. Rex, now 10 feet away and panting in the scant shade of a creosote bush, watched as the two titans traded brutal blows. The python's blood looked black in the afternoon sun, pooling in the sand like spilled ink. The lioness's golden fur became matted with it, her breaths coming in ragged, pained huffs. Still, she pressed the attack, her movements growing slower but no less precise. This was the kind of fight old cowboys would later lie about witnessing, the kind where both combatants knew only one would walk away. And the lioness? She'd already decided it would be her. Every survival instinct screamed at Rex to run, while the predators were distracted. His hind legs refused to cooperate. The python's crushing embrace had damaged something deep inside, maybe permanently. He managed 3 pathetic crawls before collapsing again, his tongue lolling in the dirt. The sounds behind him grew more vicious. The wet tear of flesh, the lioness's enraged coughing snarls, the python's hisses now laced with something like fear. Rex's vision tunneled. He thought of his handler, probably still miles away searching. Thought of his warm kennel back at the station. Thought of how damn unfair it was to die like this, helpless in the dirt while 2 better hunters decided his desert's fate. Then came the sound he'd never heard before. The python screaming. Not hissing, screaming. And suddenly, against all odds, Rex found the strength to lift his head one last time.
There's a particular madness that takes hold of mothers who've buried their young. The lioness channeled all of it. Every sleepless night watching an empty den, every phantom mule she'd imagined in the wind, every future hunt her cub would never learn, into her assault. The python, for all its evolutionary advantages, had no defense against this. Its strikes grew sluggish, its coils loosened by blood loss and shock. The lioness seized her moment, clamping her jaws around the base of its skull and bearing down with 1,200 psi of pure grief. A sickening crunch echoed across the canyon. The python's body spasmed once, twice, then went disturbingly still. For a long moment, the lioness didn't release it, just stood there trembling, her flanks heaving, the snake's limp corpse dangling from her mouth like some grotesque trophy. Then, with deliberate slowness, she turned her blood-flecked gaze toward Rex. The scene looked like a slaughterhouse floor. Ruby-red arterial blood from the python, darker, thicker blood from the lioness's wounds, and streaks of bright crimson where Rex had dragged himself. The cougar took one step toward the trembling shepherd, then another. Rex bared his teeth weakly. He wouldn't go down without at least showing them. But the lioness just walked past. Close enough that her tail brushed his nose, close enough that he smelled the death on her breath. She paused at the canyon's edge, her silhouette backlit by the setting sun. For one impossible second, Rex thought she might look back, offer some acknowledgement of their shared nightmare. But this wasn't a Disney movie. With a final shake of her matted fur, the lioness vanished into the gathering dusk, leaving Rex alone, alive, and with a story nobody would ever believe.
A sound no rattler could mimic tore through the canyon, the death cry of a reptile that knew its time had come. The python's body lashed like a whip in the dust, its head now hanging at an unnatural angle where the lioness's jaws had found their mark. Rex watched, transfixed, as the serpent's death throes sent up clouds of ochre dust. But even in victory, the lioness paid a price. Deep puncture wounds along her flank wept steadily, staining her golden fur in streaks of rust. She stood over her kill for 3 long breaths, then simply walked away. Not toward Rex, not toward shelter, just away. The desert doesn't do ceremonies. The python's tail gave one final twitch, its muscles remembering how to kill even as its brain forgot how to live. Somewhere beyond the ridge, a turkey vulture caught the scent and began its patient circling. Each inch cost him, each breath burned, but the image of Corporal Daniel's face, that square jaw perpetually shadowed with stubble, those crow's feet from too many desert sunrises kept Rex moving. His hind legs trailed uselessly through the creosote bushes, leaving twin trails in the sand like some broken desert ghost. The afternoon sun beat down without mercy. His tongue swelled in his mouth. Still, he crawled, past the python's corpse, past the lioness's bloody paw prints, toward the faintest echo of diesel engines and human voices carried on the capricious wind. The Border Patrol trained their dogs to track for 12 hours straight. Rex had lasted 14 on the day they found him as a pup. That same stubbornness fueled him now. One front paw forward, then the other. The world narrowed to this simple rhythm. Forward, always forward, even if home was just a memory now.
The python wasn't quite finished. Its decapitated body still coiled and uncoiled in macabre waves, the spinal cord's last electrical impulses firing randomly. Rex didn't look back. He didn't need to. The wet slap of scale on stone told him everything. Nature has a cruel sense of humor. The very adaptability that made pythons such perfect killers also prolonged their deaths. The lioness, if she still lived, was long gone. Only the flies remained, drawn to the carnage in their hundreds. Their buzzing became the desert's morbid applause. Rex focused ahead, where the canyon narrowed, where surely, hopefully, the patrol would come searching. His vision blurred at the edges, his tongue lolled in the dirt, collecting grit but no moisture. Somewhere beyond the pain, a thought surfaced. He'd never gotten to chew that rawhide bone hidden under his kennel pad. Such a small thing to regret at the end. The lioness materialized from the scrub oak like a desert mirage, her breathing ragged, her left foreleg held awkwardly off the ground. She passed so close Rex could count the broken claws on her massive front paws. Blood matted the fur around her neck in stiff clumps. Still, she moved with purpose, heading for some secret place only mountain lions knew. Rex's muscles tensed instinctively, but the great cat didn't so much as flick an ear in his direction. In that moment, Rex understood the truest form of wilderness, not hatred, not mercy, but absolute indifference. The lioness vanished into the gathering twilight, leaving only her blood scent hanging in the air. The message was clear. Surviving the python didn't make Rex special. It just made him lucky. Somewhere in the distance, the season's first nighthawk began its eerie churring call.
Night was coming. As dusk painted the canyon walls in shades of violet, strange things began happening. The python's corpse twitched once more, not from life, but from the dozen ravens now feasting on its flesh. A Gila monster emerged from its den to lap at congealing blood pools. And high on the ridge, where the lioness had disappeared, two smaller shapes joined her, yearlings from her last surviving litter. The desert never truly dies, it just changes players. Rex, now halfway up the canyon's gentle slope, remained oblivious to nature's reshuffling. His world had narrowed to the next foot of ground, the next labored breath. The border patrol would find him at dawn, barely alive, curled beneath a palo verde tree. The lioness would nurse her wounds in a hidden cave. And the python? Its bones would bleach in the sun until the summer monsoons washed them away. But tonight? Tonight the stars looked down on three survivors who would each carry their scars differently. It wasn't the crimson splashes that told the tale. It was the spaces between them. First, determined drag marks every few feet. Then longer gaps as Rex's strength failed. Finally, the heartbreaking smears where he'd lain panting before forcing himself onward. Any ranch hand worth his salt could have reconstructed the shepherd's ordeal from these signs alone. The way his hind legs' tracks disappeared entirely after the battle site. The crescent-shaped indents where he dug his front claws in for purchase. Even the saliva patterns showed his increasing dehydration. Out here, blood was just punctuation in the desert's relentless grammar of survival. Somewhere to the north, Corporal Daniels would later confess he knew Rex was alive before he saw him, recognized that particular stubbornness in the trail. But in this moment, beneath a sky now blooming with stars, Rex knew only the next painful yard, and the next, and the next.
It lasted less than a heartbeat. At the canyon's rim, where moonlight turned sandstone to silver, the lioness stopped mid-stride. Her ears swiveled backward, her nostrils flared. Some ancient instinct, deeper than hunger, stronger than pain, made her turn her massive head. Downslope, the German shepherd was just a dark smudge against lighter dirt, a dying shadow in a world full of them. The desert held its breath. Then a yearling's plaintive mewl sounded from the den ahead, and the moment shattered. The lioness shook herself violently, sending a spray of dried blood flying from her coat. When she moved again, it was with the single-minded purpose all mothers recognize. Her cubs needed her. The dog's fate meant nothing. Still, for years after, the Tohono O'odham people would whisper about the night the Puma Queen spared the two-legged creature. They'd say she saw something in its eyes that reminded her of her own kind's suffering. Time works differently in the desert after dark. That fragile moment when lioness and dog locked gazes across the canyon stretched like warm taffy, endless and sweet, and ultimately meaningless. Rex would never know why she hesitated. The lioness herself wouldn't remember by morning. Yet in that space between heartbeats, something passed between them more profound than any human language could capture. Recognition, perhaps, or resignation, or simply the shared knowledge that survival is its own kind of prison. Then the night wind shifted, carrying the scent of her waiting cubs, and the spell broke. The lioness melted into the moon shadows, Rex lowered his head to the cool earth, and the desert, ever the impartial witness, erased the moment as completely as it would erase their tracks by dawn. Some truths don't need speaking. Some bonds don't need names.
One moment, the lioness stood silhouetted against the starscape, a living piece of the desert's brutal poetry. The next, only swirling grit marked where she'd been. Rex's ears, one permanently notched from a long-ago knife fight with a smuggler's dog, twitched at the receding sounds of her passage, the skitter of pebbles, the soft huff of her breathing. Finally, nothing. The canyon swallowed her whole. Night creatures resumed their routines. A kangaroo rat ventured out. An elf owl claimed the python's left eye as its prize. Rex, now trembling from shock and blood loss, stared at the empty ridge. He'd seen handlers retire after 20 years without ever witnessing what he'd just had. The desert gives its lessons sparingly. His vision blurred again, but whether from tears or exhaustion, even he couldn't say. Somewhere beyond the pain, a thought surfaced. He hoped she made it to her den, hoped her cubs would greet her, hoped, and then the darkness rushed up to meet him. The old Palo Verde tree had seen its share of death. Its gnarled roots cradled coyote stills, its branches shaded the bones of unlucky jackrabbits. Now it watched over Rex as his breathing grew shallow, his body finally surrendering to cumulative trauma. This was how good dogs died in the stories, facing impossible odds, protecting what mattered, leaving the world on their terms. The cold desert stars bore witness. Somewhere to the south, a border patrol truck's engine coughed to life. Somewhere to the north, the lioness nursed her wounds while her cubs nuzzled against her. And right here, beneath a tree that had weathered 100 droughts, Rex's tail gave one final half-hearted thump in the dirt. Not for himself, not even for his absent handlers, but for the strange, beautiful cruelty of the world that had let him fight this long. His eyelids fluttered shut just as the first hint of dawn painted the eastern sky peach. Death would have been a mercy. The rising sun burned Rex's eyelids open to reveal a world gone surreal. Heat waves distorting the canyon, his tongue swollen to twice its size, his hind legs numb as old fence posts. The desert doesn't grant easy exits. A shadow passed overhead, the season's first turkey vulture, its wing beats sounding like a death rattle. Rex tried to growl, but only produced a dry hack. Somewhere beyond the ringing in his ears came a new sound, the crunch of boots on gravel. Familiar voices called his name, their tones shifting from hope to horror as they spotted his broken form. Rex's tail stirred the dust weakly. He'd lasted the night. Against the python, against the desert, against the indifferent lioness. Now came his hardest battle yet, living with what the wilderness had carved into his flesh and soul. The vulture banked away reluctantly. Not today. The footsteps came in stops and starts, the cautious approach of men who'd seen too much desert violence. Corporal Daniel's calloused hand touched Rex's shoulder, the familiar scent of gun oil and sweat cutting through the metallic stink of blood. "Jesus, Mary, and Joseph," the vet whispered as they rolled Rex onto a stretcher. The shepherd's hind legs dangled like overcooked spaghetti. Flies rose in angry clouds from his wounds. Yet when Daniels leaned close, Rex managed one feeble lick to his handler's stubbled cheek, a gesture that broke the hardened border agent more completely than any smuggler's bullet ever could. The radio crackled with backup requests, but Daniels ignored them all, cradling Rex's head in his lap as the truck bounced toward civilization. Behind them, unnoticed in the morning glare, a single set of mountain lion tracks paralleled their route for nearly a mile before veering off into the arroyos. Death hadn't claimed the serpent entirely. In the cool darkness of a nearby crevice, the python's severed tail twitched with residual nerve impulses, a grotesque parody of life. But something more disturbing moved in adjacent shadows. A younger python, barely 6 feet long, tasting the air with flickering tongue. It had witnessed everything: the German shepherd's courage, the lioness's vengeance, its own progenitor's gruesome end. Now it absorbed these lessons with reptilian patience.
As the Border Patrol truck disappeared in a dust cloud, the juvenile python began coiling around the largest remaining chunk of flesh, its own kind's corpse. The desert teaches harsh curricula. This student would prove an apt learner. High above, the same turkey vulture circled endlessly, waiting for this new predator to abandon its macabre feast. It would be waiting a long time. Some creatures are born knowing how to survive. Others must be taught. The sound shattered the desert's stillness. Not a scream, not a roar, but something infinitely older. It began deep in the lioness's chest, vibrating through her wounded ribs, erupting into the purple twilight with enough force to silence crickets mid-chirp. Her cubs pressed close, sensing their mother's turmoil. The howl contained multitudes. Grief for her lost offspring, pain from her injuries, fury at the python, and perhaps, just perhaps, some unnameable emotion about the German shepherd. The rising moon painted her silhouette crimson as she called again and again, until her voice grew hoarse. 20 miles away, Rex stirred in his veterinary cage, his paws twitching as if running. The night nurse smiled, thinking he dreamed of chasing rabbits. She was wrong. Out in the wilderness, the lioness finally fell silent. Her golden eyes reflected the moonlight like twin desert suns as she nuzzled her living cubs. The past was dead. The future was hunting.
White walls, sterile smells, the constant beep of machines. Rex's first conscious thought was that he'd failed. Good dogs died in the field, not in clinics. Then the pain hit, radiating from his spine like electric shocks. A vet tech gasped as his eyes fluttered open. Outside the window, Tucson's sprawled oblivious, shoppers buying groceries, kids playing soccer, tourists snapping saguaro photos. None knew what price the desert exacted from its warriors. Rex tried to stand, but his hindquarters remained stubbornly still beneath the bandages. A soft whine escaped his throat. The tech rushed for the vet, leaving Rex alone with the IV drip's rhythmic hiss and the growing certainty that he'd never patrol again. Through the glass, he watched a mockingbird land on a power line. Its song sounded like laughter. Rex closed his eyes. Let them laugh. He'd walked through hell. That was enough. Corporal Daniels would later describe the scene to drinking buddies, like something out of a damn Peckinpah movie. The vultures had actually led them to Rex, a swirling black cyclone of wings against the azure sky. What they found beneath turned seasoned agents pale, blood-soaked sand, python scales glittering like macabre confetti, and drag marks telling a story of unimaginable determination. The forensics team bagged evidence, while Daniels followed Rex's trail, his boots scuffing the same earth his partner had crawled across. Near the Palo Verde tree, he found it. Rex's chewed-up leather collar, the metal badge still gleaming. The big agent pocketed it with shaking hands, unaware that back at HQ, Rex was flatlining for the first time. Above the canyon, the vultures dispersed reluctantly. Their patience would be rewarded soon enough. The desert always provides fresh meat. Just not today. Not this dog.
Medically inexplicable, the young vet kept repeating as Rex stabilized. The handlers exchanged knowing looks. They'd all seen that particular brand of stubbornness before. Old Man Henderson recalled Rex tracking through a dust storm for 8 hours straight in 19. Ramirez remembered him taking down an armed smuggler twice his size. This was just Rex being Rex. Outside the clinic, reporters gathered, smelling a feel-good story. Inside, Daniels knelt by Rex's cage, pressing the dog's own collar to his nose. "You crazy bastard," he whispered, voice thick. Rex's tail thumped weakly against the padding. The vet prattled on about spinal trauma percentages and rehabilitation odds. The handlers tuned him out. They'd seen the canyon. They'd followed the blood trail. They knew exactly what kind of miracle they were dealing with. The kind forged in dust and pain and teeth. The kind no textbook could explain. The desert either kills you or remakes you. Rex had chosen option 2. The juvenile python moved with purpose now, its belly distended from gorging on its elder's remains. Evolution had gifted it with a perfect memory for scents. It would know Rex's musk forever. As night fell, it tested the air with flickering tongue, tracing the German shepherd's path down to the Palo Verde tree and back toward human territory. The young serpent paused where the Border Patrol vehicles had parked, tasting gasoline and sweat, and something new: determination. Behind it, the canyon walls glowed amber in sunset's last light. Ahead lay the endless desert, ripe with prey and possibility. The python hesitated only a moment before choosing its path, not toward the wilderness, but parallel to the road Rex's rescuers had taken. It wasn't ready yet, but soon. Scales whispered across warm stone as it slid into a drainage culvert to digest its meal and dream of future hunts. The circle remained unbroken.
Moonlight transformed the ridge into a monochrome dreamscape. The lioness stood motionless atop her kingdom, watching distant headlights snake toward Tucson. Her wounds had begun healing, though she'd carry a stiff foreleg for life. Below, her cubs practiced hunting skills on a hapless pack rat. The night smelled of creosote and promise. Yet something kept drawing her gaze eastward, some instinct she couldn't name. Far beyond human perception, Rex shifted in his hospital cage at that exact moment, whimpering in his drug-induced sleep. The lioness's ears twitched. She'd survived. The shepherd had survived. The python? Well, nature abhorred waste. A gust of wind ruffled her fur, carrying the scent of rain from distant mountains. With a last glance toward civilization, the lioness turned and nosed her cubs toward their den. Dawn would come soon, and with it, the endless work of living. But for now, under a sky blazing with stars, she simply existed, wild, free, and utterly unconquered. 3 survivors, 3 stories. Rex would eventually walk again, though he'd favor his right hind leg during monsoon season. The lioness raised her cubs to adulthood, teaching them to avoid 2-legged creatures and their strange dogs. The juvenile python grew thick and powerful, its hunting grounds creeping ever closer to suburban backyards. They never crossed paths again. Yet, on certain still nights, when the wind blows just right, Rex, now retired to Daniel's ranch, will lift his graying muzzle and sniff intently at the air. His tail wags once, briefly, before he settles back into sleep. Far away, the aging lioness might pause mid-hunt, her golden eyes scanning empty horizons. And deep in some storm drain, the now mature python tastes the breeze with flickering tongue. The desert keeps its secrets well, but nothing truly ends in that vast wilderness. Not pain, not courage, and certainly not legends. It simply waits for the next chapter to begin.